This technocratic government was meant to address the fundamental problems that Lebanon is suffering at this point, not least the huge decline in the value of the pound and the fact that inflation is now beginning to run rampant. Why has it failed to achieve its goals?
I think Dan was excellent at highlighting, the challenges that Lebanon is facing. And one of the reasons that Hassan Diab was chosen back in January, you'll remember, after several months of other prime minister designates, he was finally successful, was because of how little stake he had in the existing power structure, relatively how weak he was. And unfortunately, that meant the last 7 months under his tenure have been remarkably unsuccessful at realising really any progress on any issues at all, including things like investigating the central bank. That was eventually canned a couple of weeks ago. So it was his, ineffectiveness, ironically his lack of access as a political operator, in that he wasn't one. He was considered a technocrat, but he headed a government of politically affiliated individuals or politicians, MPs, who have a stake in the existing power structure. And it's going to be very difficult to see how Lebanon can get through this with something like a purely technocratic government, because it's going to need people, to some extent, who can negotiate that existing power structure to be able to work their way through it. That is, of course, if they can at all.
Well, that sounds very bleak. I mean, obviously, the explosion has brought to a head the existing underlying problems that the country has been facing here. But your analysis suggests that there's very little chance of them finding a way through this that brings a reformed political system.
Unfortunately, that really is the case. I mean, in order to see the kind of reformed political system that, a lot of Lebanese have been calling for, not just in the last several days, but since the 17th of October last year, it's going to need political buy-in from the elites who have an awful lot to lose, too much to lose. The canning of the investigation into the central bank was part of that. A number of the most important political operators in the country hold majority stakes in Lebanon's largest commercial banks. And then that also speaks to how their own constituencies haven't yet pressured them to make those kinds of changes. In as much as there are individuals with political, personal and business interests, if they were to see, some sort of outcry from their own communities outside of Beirut, across the wider country, then we might start to see a shift. And if we do see that shift over the coming months, as things in Lebanon, with the devaluation of the lira, if that continues to worsen, then we might see that manifestation of discontent in smaller communities. But we're going to need to see that before the political elite have an incentive to really change.